Hey Matt, what's going on, man? Thanks for taking out the time and chatting with us today.
Yeah, Peter, really appreciate you having me on, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah, dude, I know we met recently, within the past month and a half, or it goes back to May. But that being said, as we develop this relationship and stuff like that, super interested in your business, how you've been able to, get it up and running and kind of where you guys are at today. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of it today, can you give us, a little bit of feedback on how you got into real estate and, where you were before, and then get us up to speed now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm from Wisconsin originally. I live in Southern California now, here in San Diego. Love it out here. Um, I'm from software sales. That's what I have done for about a decade, and a couple different companies. Worked for Concur, which is owned by SAP. So some larger names, and uh, always kind of from early on, I've kind of wanted to do things a little bit differently than what society was telling me that I should be doing. But I graduated. I worked in Boston for a few years. That's where my wife is from, and and then we just did this crazy thing. We quit our jobs in Boston. We moved down to the Caribbean for a year. So we lived in St. Martin, and we're making $4.60 an hour. With minimum wage down there, which is just crazy, $4.60. So we've always kind of had that adventurous thought process of, hey, let's go and try different things, see what we like, figure out what we want to do with our lives, and then try to tailor it to that direction. So we went down there and had a great time. Didn't make any money, and we realized, okay, how can we do this again without needing to be concerned about working W-2 jobs or trying to make that work. So pretty actually when we were down there in the Caribbean, I started doing research. I had free time at that job that I wasn't getting paid much at, and I started doing research. I found Bigger Pockets. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is kind of the introduction, or the Bible, right, to real estate investing, and just get you really excited about learning what an asset is and how it can provide income for you permanently. So that that got me started. And actually, in 2018 was the first property that I bought. I was going to real estate meetups in San Diego, where I am locally here, and just learning as much as I possibly could. I learned for about a year or two, did a bunch of research, read a lot of books, and then I bought a four-plex in Wisconsin for 55,000. So if you
That's
can
nice.
believe that,
Yeah, way
those
different than
properties do
California.
those properties do exist, and for anyone who's from Southern California, that is unfathomable. But it's a really great way to kind of cut your teeth and get in, learn how to do the inspection, learn how to do the appraisal, learn how to close on a property, learn how to do the financing. Everything is the same. It's just at a much smaller scale and with much less risk. And then the next year, we bought, my mom and we bought a 7 unit multifamily. And then from there, I learned about short term rentals and jumped into that avenue, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But that was the introduction to real estate. That's how I got my foot in the door. And then very quickly, once you start taking action, things ramp up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that resonated was, you leaving your job after, a significant amount of time. So before we go on to, short-term rentals and what you're doing today, and how you're really helping people get a lot of returns, how did that feel? Like what, I know that, you went against the norm of, and a lot of people do, especially when they start looking at real estate, and you can talk to people at Bigger Pockets, and you can talk to people that probably aren't even on Bigger Pockets, don't even know about it, and have done it because they just had a calling, right? They didn't feel like they were meeting their ultimate potential. So how did that feel? And like walk us through the scenarios of leaving, and then now where you're at today.
Yeah, and I know we had, a similar situation, right? And that's one thing that brought us together right off the bat, is that um, we worked our way out of the W-2 and kind of turned that into a full-time situation. But let me take you back to when we came back from the Caribbean. I knew that I wanted to do things differently. I was researching real estate, but I still had my expertise in software sales. So I jumped right back into that, um, and worked for one company for a year, and then the last one for 4 years. My whole goal there was live off of less than what I'm making, take my commissions and whatever I'm making, take those commissions and put it into real estate investments. So for 5 years after that crazy, year in the Caribbean, I was working back at a W-2 job with the goal of getting to financial freedom. And then that would allow me to quit my W-2 job. And then that gives me time freedom. That gives me location freedom. And that gives me the true freedom that I'm kind of looking for to dictate my life. So I did it for 5 years again after coming back, 5 years back in the W-2. And finally, 4 months ago, I was finally able to exit the W-2. And it felt, it's equally amazing and scary at the same time. As you know, you're
Yeah.
really taking a leap of faith. The great thing is that I had a side gig that was already ready to pay me out. So I kind of had built I had built the plane already before leaving. I'm
Hmm.
more conservative that way than maybe some other people are, where they'll just say, "I'm out, I'm going for it," and they'll make it work.
Yeah.
Um, but it was an amazing feeling, and now I get to dictate what I do with my day, what really brings me energy, what doesn't, and go towards those things that do.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta kind of jump. Sometimes people are, over prepared. They stay for an extra, 15 years, and then they feel like they're prepared to go. And I feel like, I'm not the burn the boats and jump, without any type of parachute.
Yep.
Sounds like, you're the
Same.
same, and need to make sure that at least there's some things lined up, because in case something falls through, you have a little backing, and maybe
Mhm.
have some deals going, or you have an active income behind you, or significant amount of passive income. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's cool to hear, man. And yeah, like you said, we connected on that. We resonated, with each other because I did the same. It's sometimes people never leave and feel like they should, and it's cool to hear people's stories like yourself. Like, hey, I did X, Y, and Z, and this is what I did to prepare, and this is how I left. A lot of people too think that in real estate, it's going to take, 6 months, you're going to make a ton of
Mhm.
money, and then you're going to be able to exit, a W-2 or whatever job that you have that you hate, or, don't really feel like you can do for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
So it's cool to hear that. So
Um,
let's go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's important because you and I both did this, right? And I think it is a big topic that a lot of people, maybe a lot of your listeners, are thinking the same thing. Hey, I'm in a W-2. It's going just fine, but it's not the route that I want to be doing permanently. And I think a lot of the questions that I was asking myself and other people were asking me is, how did you actually get over the mental aspect of leaving, and what were the actions that you took to be prepared to leave and actually leave? And I think, I'm curious for your thoughts as well on what you did mentally to prepare and hold yourself accountable to actually leaving, because it was difficult for me. I set January 1st, 2023 as the date, and I think it is really, really important to set a date, because then you can work backwards from there and say, okay, I set the date. What do I need to do by then to have that ready? So, for anyone out there, I think it is important to set a date. And then I also had a coach that I was working with. And on a regular basis, we were working through my mental, well, what about this or what about that? Well, what do I do with insurance? What do I do if this happens? And so I had somebody who was coaching me and helping me to work through those limiting beliefs that I had, and it was constant. So those were a couple things that I did. I'm curious for what you did.
How long, and real quick, and you probably mentioned, I was probably just thinking about your story, but how long, like, did you set that date out? So you said, January 2023. Was that 2 years from that, date? When was that?
I think I set my the first date a couple years ago.
Okay.
I think I set the first date when, and then because I was successful at my job, and when you set the date, you get a lot more motivated. I think that really helps. Once I set the date, now I see a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, when I'm doing my day to day work, I'm saying, okay, this is all a means to an end, and the
Hmm.
end is the date that I set. That's why I think it's so important. Now, I was able to bring that date forward because I was more successful at my job than I expected to, and it was a great company. So I set that date a few years before, And then January 1st, I pushed it out, right? I pushed it out because I was waiting for commissions to come in. I had deals that pushed that I was still trying to close. And so it was going to be March, and then it was going to be April. And eventually I just had to decide I need to forego the opportunity at the company in order to pursue my dreams. So at some point, I had to give something up in order to go and pursue this.
Yeah, I mean, your story is pretty close to mine. I set the date of December. Well, it was like December 22, so 2022, a month,
Mhm,
before yours, and I set it up in 2019. So kind of almost, with you trending the same way. And mine was like, I had a baby last year, and that was kind of, that was just serendipitous at the same time. But
mhm.
and we didn't plan like, hey, in 2022 we're gonna have a kid, and then I'm gonna transition out. That happened the same year, just same type of year, happenstance and stuff like that. But
Sure.
I knew, I put a date in mind, and like you said, you put a date on the calendar and then you get excited. I mean,
Mhm,
granted, 2-3 years, it's not as like super exciting when you put that, and then you're like, okay, like 6 months later, you're like, okay, am I still, this excited for it?
mhm,
You'll have ups and downs and say like, okay, well, I need to do this, I need to do that. And I also had a goal in mind each year to meet on real estate sales.
mhm,
Granted, we've had some great, past couple of years, but I had a goal in mind to meet each year for at least 2 years straight, so I can walk
mhm,
away and say, "Hey, yeah, I'm meeting this goal," which I hit that.
mhm,
Um, and and then, leading up to it, dude, it was probably the hardest thing,
mhm.
outside of, yeah, pretty much the hardest thing that I had to do over the course of my life. There's some other things that obviously, people go through, but that was, recalling that is like, okay,
Mhm,
do I go now? Like, and mine, I had emailed HR saying like, "Hey, I'm going to leave at this date,"
mhm.
and the HR lady was at, it was like around Thanksgiving last year, and she was off. And then as soon as she came back, she didn't read through my emails, because I couldn't contact her any other way. So she just like, disconnected me from everything and basically said, "Yeah,
Oh,
your date's
wow.
today." So like, it wasn't like I still had some vacation time, and I was like, "Hey, I
Mhm,
want to take this to this date and stuff like that." She didn't read through that. She just like completely cut me off. So I was like, "Okay, well, I guess it's today versus, in like a month, or like 3 weeks or whatever." So I was like, "Okay, well, I guess rip the band-aid off." But
Yeah.
that's how I did it, was just had a goal in mind income wise, and then also put a,
Mhm.
far out plan, and then had some other, other goals in mind, like, hey, I'm going to have this, this many investments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you could work till, and granted, I was an agent for, a few years prior to that, of setting that into place, but
Yeah.
that's how I did it.
Yeah. No, I think we had a very similar structure, right? Where we were building the side gig, and then you kind of realize at some point you're like, this side gig is I'm doing really well at it, right? I'm doing really well at it. I know I can scale it, and if I spend even half the time that I do on my W-2 job over at this, I think I can be, I think I can be really successful at it, and then have more control over my life. So, we kind of had a similar process. I also got my real estate license. It's one of those things where you say, okay, I know that this is the direction I want to go. Let me take the course. Let me get the license, regardless of whether I use it or not. It's another option that I have, and I think that helps you mentally when you say, okay, what if this doesn't work? Well, okay, think through and write out a little bit of a plan. Hey, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C. And once you write those out, then you have a lot more confidence, and go and talk to other people who have done it, which I think is also a huge thing that will help you out. Go to real estate meetups, go to entrepreneurial meetups, even if you're not doing it yet, and go
Hmm.
talk to these people who are doing it for a living, and haven't had W-2s for decades. Those
Yeah.
will be the people that'll be your mentors that will help you when you have a bad day when you're out on your own. So that community is huge with something like this.
Yeah, you honestly, one point that you made right now was exactly, what anybody should go do is like talk to people that have left, or like don't have never had a W-2 versus the people that are at your work or, your corporate
Yeah.
job or the, people I worked with because they never fathomed that. Like
Yeah.
I had a pension job. I was a, safety employee. So,
Mhm.
all those people were working towards the pension and then they would leave and some people would stay a
Yeah.
little bit longer, but they always said, stay till this amount or this age and then you can get a check, as a pension from, that day until you pass away. And I was like, everybody was like, no, stay until that date. And you got to go outside of that and talk to people that, have the different mentality of like, I went through it and this is what I, gained from it. And so you hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well. I mean, my sister's in the military, and there's also a similar thing there with the military pension. And one thing that if anyone has that similar situation, is it helps if you quantify it, right? Because that concept of a pension sounds great, but then you say, okay, what does that actually equate to? Is it 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 a month? What is that? What does that equate to? And could I create that kind of a passive income stream on my own much faster than that through a different avenue,
Mhm.
whether it's business or real estate or whatever it is. So I think that's another thing to think about and potentially overcome is, what is the actual number? Once you know the number, then you can put a realistic idea of what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Well, dude, I appreciate you going in a deep dive on that because I think that that's, whenever I get someone on the podcast that talks about, hey, I used to have a corporate job or a W-2 and I left and now I'm doing this. I always like kind of just going a little bit deeper than that because it really helps a lot of people that are listening, like, people that like us 2, 3 years ago, where it's like, oh, okay, some other people did it. They were successful and they were able to do it.
Yeah,
So going into your business today, talk a little bit about that. Like, what are you guys doing? What's the name of it? And deep dive
sure.
on that.
Yeah, of course. So our business is Stay Classy Homes, stayclassyhomes.com. You can find us there. It is a short-term rental management business, right? For vacation rentals. And we live in Southern California. It's a perfect location for this. There's obviously a huge abundance of people that want to come visit, a lot of tourism, domestic and international. So I'm very fortunate to be in a major hub of somewhere that I can grow that type of business. And there's three. So let me just break it down. There's three different ways to invest in vacation rentals. Either number one, you can buy them. You can buy a property, you can set it up, and then you can manage it yourself, or you can hire somebody like us to manage it. So buying is one way. Then you get the appreciation. You get the appreciation of the property. You get to depreciate on your taxes. You get tax benefits. There's a lot of benefits to buying a property, but if you're in Southern California, you probably don't have, buying having the capacity to buy a variety of properties is difficult when the
Mhm.
average price is $1 million or higher. So avenue one is buying. Avenue two is management, where we manage properties for other people, and they have already purchased the properties. They have a second home. They are looking for an investment property, but they don't. They already have a W-2. They have a full plate. They have kids, and they just don't have time to go and learn the ins and outs. Or maybe they already have tried it and they said, "Okay, I was managing it for a while, but I'm struggling now. I need some help." That's where we come in as professional operators, and we are making sure that the pricing looks good. We're making sure that the marketing looks really good, that the professional photos look great, that the quality of the listing looks really good. And then we're doing the guest communication, we're doing the vendor coordination with the cleaners and the maintenance. So that's an all encompassing service that we do for our clients, and we get a percentage of revenue for that service. So that's model number two. And then the third model to get involved with vacation rentals is what's called rental arbitrage. And that is where you look for somebody who's looking to lease out their place long term. And you give them a call, you catch up with them, let them know that what you're doing as a business, that you're looking to sign a long term lease with them, and then also re rent it out to vacationers or corporate travelers who are coming into town. So you're getting their permission upfront, making sure that they're comfortable with it. You're building it all into the lease. You're signing the lease in the name of your business. and then you go through the process of furnishing and designing the property to your needs. And then you make the income on the delta between your rent and all of your expenses and the amount that you're making. And sometimes you're doing well in high season, and sometimes you're losing money in low season, right? So you really have to be smart about what your projections are, what your seasonality is in that type of in that type of investing. So those are the three types. Buying property takes the most amount of money up front. Arbitrage, you have to buy the furniture, so that's also a decent upfront investment, not nearly as much as buying. And then management really doesn't have any cost. You just need to do the marketing to get clients in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So with let's just go into, I come to you as a client.
Hmm.
How do you set up, kind of the structure? So I'm a great fit for you guys. I don't want to
Hmm.
arbitrage. I just want you to manage my, property. What does that look like on a, if we started today on a, month to month basis going forward?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the most important thing is that the expectations going in are correct as far as what your income potential is. So, anyone who's potentially interested in going this route or says, "Hey, I've been renting long term for years. I've heard a lot about vacation rentals, and I'd like to try that because the revenue is higher, and the revenue is definitely higher, but your expenses are also higher." So, I think it's important to reach out to somebody like us, or another property manager wherever you're located, and have them run an analysis, and maybe reach out to a couple and have a couple run analysis, because you want to get a sense for what is the income range that I can expect, and then what are the potential expenses that I'm going to incur, where I already have my overhead, my mortgage, my interest, my taxes, but then you're adding a cleaning fee on, you're adding supplies on, you have to keep the linens fresh, the towels, the paper goods, soaps, all that kind of stuff becomes an additional expense. And then you're also paying for the utilities as well, because the guest is not going to pay those. So it's important for us to do an underwriting upfront to make sure that the expectations are correct going in. Once we're on the same page there, it's really pretty fast. If the place is not furnished or designed, then we have my wife does a lot of our interior design. She runs her own business, but we also have other designers as well that can go in, take a look at the property, get the specs of it, design it. You can go as high end or as wild as you want. You can put it that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're doing colors. Sometimes we're doing wallpaper. We painted the ceilings. We're doing game rooms. Um, we're putting in hot tubs. There's a variety of things you can do to get up into the upper echelon of rentals in that area. And the what we've learned is that the better you design it, the more insulated you are to seasonality, the more insulated you are to recession, and the better your returns are. So we're really big advocates of great high quality design, making sure that you set aside money to put into furniture and design, and that's going to maximize your returns. From there, we get professional photos. We make sure our vendors are all set up, and we're pretty much up and running within a couple weeks after the design is finished.
How, I mean, in going through all that, I could probably say, like, there's probably a good amount of people that come to you and you say, "Hey, my management fee is X,"
Mhm.
and they go, "Okay, never mind, I can do it on my own because it's going to be easy." And
Sure.
a lot of people say that, right? And then how many people say that and then come back and say, "You know what, never mind. This is, I would assume a lot, especially because how professional
Yeah.
you guys are and how you line everything out. Like, um, there's
Yeah.
probably a lot of people that bucket the system of rental management altogether,
Mhm.
but you guys are, I would assume, constant communication with people coming in and out the door, and repairs and vendors coming in because
Yeah.
someone broke something and everything else.
It's a lot of ongoing work, and I don't think people really expect how much coordination and stuff you actually have to learn in order to be successful at it. I mean, within our business, we probably use 8 to 10 software platforms in order to keep track of the cleaners, to keep track of the maintenance, to handle maintenance requests, to manage all the calendars, to do the pricing. We have put a lot of time and effort into making sure that we're up to date on all the latest tools and that we're using those effectively. But to your point, we've had several people who came and we did assessments for them. Happy to do those assessments. No requirement to sign up for us as management, but we're just happy to educate people and get people excited because it's changed our lives as well. So
Yeah.
we've had people we've done assessments for, they've done, and they've gone and managed it themselves. Pretty quickly, a lot of times they'll come back and say, I don't know what I just did. I opened it and all of a sudden I have all these one night bookings and people are trying to have parties at my place and I don't know, there was some damage. I don't know how to handle a reimbursement request. How do I get paid for this? So we've had that several times where people say, I'm too busy to learn this. And I would rather have you guys manage that for me, and you're taking a cut, but you're also making sure that it's successful. I think the dangerous part is if you don't have the time to really invest and learn how to do it properly, then you can fail. Airbnb will literally kick you off the platform if you're not doing things up to their standards, and they're being much more strict about that. So you want to be careful about making an investment and not putting the time into to learn how to run it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. A lot of people get into this, maybe have 1 to 2 properties because 1 to 2 properties could really throw off a lot of cash flow
Hmm.
each and every month, especially if you're in a market like Southern California
Hmm.
and not running it like a business. I always tell, clients that come to me and say, hey, or just friends like, hey, you have rental properties in, California. It's tough because the, tenant landlord laws and everything else. And I say, well, if
Hmm.
you run a business, just like you run a rental and you want to have a professional business, you need to have a professional rental too. And doing your
Hmm.
checks and balances, like if you hired an employee, you're not going to, not interview them and go through the steps to make sure that they are vetted and everything else. Same thing with a tenant. You can't
Hmm.
just, throw someone in there because you met him one day on a Saturday, at a baseball game. You gotta really do a deep dive because this is someone that's going to be in there a year, 2, 3, 4 years. And same thing with you guys. Um,
Hmm.
you know, this is running a business and this is running something where, you're running, a potential property that can get, gross wise $100,000, which is,
Yeah.
as you and I both know, that's, a good income coming off of, an amazing income coming off a property. So that's why it's like, okay, well, let's get down to the brass tacks and know that you need to run this as a solid business.
Yeah, and I think there's um, a lot of people who were successful running it themselves at the start, but things are moving so quickly in this industry, whether it comes to regulation or tools that you can use, and just the quality of operators is improving because everyone that I've talked to who's bought one is looking for their next one, right? Because it is still new and it is a very successful and very lucrative way to go if you are doing it properly and if you're standing out from the crowd. I want to be clear there. Um, so there are some operators that were doing great for years and now they're struggling because they're not keeping up with the quality of design, or they're not keeping up with the tools that are helping them out. So there's also opportunity there for us to come in and say, hey, if you're interested, we can help you out and we can help you upgrade the design and we can help you manage it. And we think that we can take you from what you're making 80,000 a year up to 140,000 a year. And so our management fee, when you consider that kind of a difference, because we can operate it and market it better, it's a win-win situation. And we do see a lot of those situations where we can truly provide much more income that more than covers our management fee.
Yeah, dude, another great point by you is like, you could run, if you're running, I've talked to so many people, they're like, oh yeah, I've had 2 rentals, long-term rentals for, 20 years and I've never raised the rent, or I raised it maybe $100 every 5 years. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, you're leaving so much money on the table. Granted, do you want, to raise the, amount every year, $300? No, but you need to also realize you're going to have higher property taxes. You're going to have, higher
Hmm.
maintenance costs because as supply chain and everything like that we just ran into are going to have issues. Like you just said, like people are running it at 80, $90,000, but if we went through and revamped a lot of things, you could be making 120. So you're leaving, you
Hmm.
know 30 to 50 to $60,000 on the table. Even if
Yeah.
you added our management fee in there, you're still eclipsing what you're making now, and it's way better to do that versus just saying, okay, I can just figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other benefit of going that route is even if you're paying a property manager, if your revenue increases from, long term, whatever it was long term, up to the short term amount, or where you were struggling before to a good amount, the entire value of your asset increases because the income has increased. So we see a lot of there's a really big secondary market for turnkey short term rentals, Airbnbs all over the country. And if you are showing that you can make a certain amount of gross income, they don't even care about the expenses as much. As if you can show that you're making 120,000 a year as opposed to 80, then your property is going to be valued much higher. And if you do need to exit, or you decide, wow, I just got an offer that I never would have expected because of how well it's operating, that's a huge benefit as well. So increasing the top line will increase the overall value of your home as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, you could probably mention, so many times going on VRBO and, Airbnb and seeing like, not good pictures. It's same thing as the MLS. Like you see a property and people are like, why does it sit on the market for so long? Or why didn't it get the same amount as, the next door neighbor that, had the same condition house? It's like, well, they didn't market it properly. And, and people say, well, professional photos are, they're only, a few $100s, and it doesn't seem like it would matter that much, and honestly it does. Like, the tactics that you have as a professional like yourself and running a management company is huge. So what are some, give me a few tips if I came to you and I
Sure.
wanted to use you, like, and you're looking over my listing, like what are like 2 to 5 things that you always see on people's listings that you ultimately right away say, hey, these 2 to 5 things are what's going to get you an extra easily $20,000 or $10,000.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, yes, to your point, professional photos. I honestly and truly believe that if you get if you don't have professional photos and you get professional photos, that will pay for itself within the first week. You will literally pay that back within the first week because you will have more views. You will get a higher average nightly rate. So, 100%, I feel like that's the simplest and fastest way to improve your marketing is through photos. There's a variety of things that I take a look at. I mean, all the time I'm looking at different rentals in different markets and kind of comparing and seeing what's out there. The more rural markets, you have a lot less competition when it comes to design and to the operation of it. And pretty quickly, I can pick apart a listing and I can see, hey, they have the same, their listing photos aren't professional at all. They're taking kind of strange angles, or even if they do have professional photos, everything looks like a normal house. It looks like my house would be. It's beige, kind of regular furniture. What I'm looking for, and I think what a lot of people are looking for, is something that they wouldn't get at their house. Give me a game room. Give me a hot tub. I don't have one of those. I'd love to. I'd love to try out a hot tub. I would love to have a coffee bar, when I arrive. Maybe there's a Instagram wall or just a little library. There's endless number of ideas that you can do to make your place unique. And that is what's going to get you out of that 50th percentile and maybe up to that 75th percentile. So design is one that I look for. Pictures I look for. I look at the calendar. I want to see what your pricing structure looks like. So many people just say, I want 350 a night every night. And the whole calendar is all the same pricing. But I think it's common sense to know that more people travel on the weekends than during the weekdays. So just like airlines, just like hotels, why wouldn't you price the weekends higher than the weekdays? And I'll look at people's calendar and I'll see every weekend is booked for the next 3 weeks or 3 months. None of the weekdays are booked, right? So what does that tell you? It tells you that the weekdays are too high and the weekends are too low. And
Yeah.
so really quickly you can evaluate the pricing structure. One thing I also see is some people will have really restrictive night stays. They might have a 7 night minimum, a 6 night, a 5 night, 4 night. And in some cases that makes sense because your HOA, is restrictive, or you have specific rules that you need to follow with the regulations. Totally get that. But if you are looking to maximize your revenue, then the shorter night stay that you have, the more marketability your property is going to have, and the more people are going to even see it in the first place. So hopefully that helps, right? It's, those are a few things that are going to make your revenue go up. And then the last one, which is also really important, is occupancy. Now, I'm not a big fan of filling every room with bedrooms, but I do think that if you are struggling, if you have the ability to add in bunk beds or in one of the rooms, or rollaway beds or a pull-out couch. I'm not a huge fan of pull-out couches
Yeah.
because they're a complex mechanism, easily broken.
Yeah.
But if you really need to, that is a great way. If you can host two more people, your revenue will immediately go up.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's huge, man. That helps, especially the people that are, looking for adding a little value to their properties. I
Mhm.
think, even though it may seem common sense, people that have maybe been, focused on something else for years and years and years, and then buy one short-term rental, they may be
Mhm.
missing that boat. Just because they don't really know the space. So that's
For sure.
that's definitely good. Is there, for you, and you said, I think you said you use like 10 or 15 different platforms to help manage and stuff like that. Um, what are the good softwares to use to evaluate properties? So, I know AirDNA. What's some other ones?
Yeah, AirDNA is the big one. They've been around for the longest. They have the most data. There's a free one. You do have to pay for AirDNA now. There's a free one called Rabbu.com, Rabbu.com. I do like that one. It gives you seasonality. It shows you what other places are booked for the next 30 days only. So you got to be a little careful. If you're in high season, it's going to look really great. If you're in low season, it's not going to look great. So you just
Yeah.
have to pay attention to that. But that one's free. STR Insights is another one. But I think those two are great places to start. If you really are interested in making an investment and putting money in, then go pay for the AirDNA market data for that market, and that'll show you all the different properties. It'll show you how many 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 or 5 you're at, what the seasonality looks like. They do a good job. They do a good job.
Yeah, I feel like recently they changed it from, an unpaid program to now you have to pay on
Hmm.
AirDNA. So I think that was that like the last 6 months. Do you know?
Yeah, I think it was in about the last year, and
Okay.
their free tool, the simple rentalizer tool, used to be free,
Yeah.
and now you have to pay for it. It doesn't surprise me. I
Yeah.
think they had enough notoriety at that point, that people know that they're the one to go to, that they
Hmm.
were going to monetize it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I knew at some point like they were going to have to switch it. Same thing as, a lot of other platforms that, for the first couple of years that they're alive and, breathing and making money,
Mhm.
adding that would be, a paywall and stuff like that is adding it a little bit more.
Yep.
Um,
Mhm.
is there some other platforms that you use to, are you guys doing the design or are you guys coming in and bringing a designer in?
Yeah, so we definitely bring a designer in. My wife is my favorite designer, as you can imagine. She started her business, when we were doing this, and there are designers that are specific to hospitality, specific to vacation rentals. She's one of those, and that translates into hotels and hostels, that kind of stuff as well. But 100%, the design element is so critical to how successful you're going to be and how much revenue you're going to make. Go hire a professional for it. Um, when we started, we did some of that ourselves, and I've seen other people do it themselves. And if what the end result is that you're probably going to end up somewhere in that 50th percentile, somewhere in the middle. Maybe you can kind of get up to the 60th, a little bit higher. But if you
Yeah.
really want to be up in that top 10% or top 20% of the market, you need to have somebody whose professional job is to make the photo stand out, make your listing pop, so that people can't go buy it without clicking on it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, so moving forward, last like few questions, but before we get to those last few questions, is there anything that through running your business that you've seen outside of what you told me that you've seen, like that all of a sudden has ticked up, in the last 6 to 12 months, an Airbnb and or, VRBO that, people should look out for, anything from regulation or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think just on the regulation front, anywhere you're interested in going, regulation is not a bad thing. It provides stability to a market. It provides the confidence to invest there. I mean, Dallas is one situation where they just put some really, really strict regulations in place. Out of, I don't invest there, so I don't know what the history of it is. But a lot of people who thought they were making good investments now might be in a really tough position. So I think that having a city with regulation is a good thing. It gives you predictability. It gives you something that you can work with and expect. And there's a lot of opportunity when you really read through the regulation rules. What type of zoning can I do this? What can't I do? Okay, how do I go and find this type of zoning? And you can find opportunities where supply is constrained because regulations are strict. That's great. If you can find a place where supply is constrained, then your well-designed place will stand out for years, 5, 10 years. So regulations are a good thing for everybody, and you just have to make sure you do your research and understand it. Just in general, what I would recommend to your listeners, though, is you have to there's still a ton of opportunity out there. I know a lot of people talk about the Airbnb bust, what's going on. I mean, there was something that went viral that said all the revenues were down. I'm sure you probably saw it,
Yeah.
Peter, but it was everywhere, and then it got disproven very quickly that that's not actually the case. Maybe revenues might be down a percentage point or two, but all in all, Airbnb has grown 75%. They've almost doubled as a company since 2019. So just, keep that in mind. There's a massive wave that's being driven by this ability to go and stay in other places, other people's homes, and have an Instagrammable location that you can post to your friends. And the wave is still growing. There's a lot more people jumping into it, and so there is more competition. So what I would say is that if you're going to go into a major market, make sure that you have a unique property that stands out, right? If you're
Hmm.
getting a 3-bed, 2-bath property in Phoenix, you're really, really going to struggle. That's what everybody has. If you can find a 5+ bedroom in that same market, you're going to do great because there's just not that many of them. So if you're going major market, go with a unique property. There's also a lot of opportunity in rural regional markets where there's not nearly as much competition, and you can take a good design and go and find in the Midwest where I'm from, you can find something that will do really well and be really successful there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think regulation is good. I would say too, on that regulation note, is like as soon as you buy the property you're planning on doing a short-term rental, get the license immediately. So
Yep.
even if you're looking to do rehab,
Mhm.
I would work on the license day one you close, because if they do what they did in Dallas, but you already have it and you're grandfathered in,
Mhm.
then you don't have to worry about it because you already got that. That's the same thing in 29 Palms. They did the same thing
Yep.
a little over a year ago. I had a client, I had a few clients out there, and as soon as he closed, I was like, get your license. Glad he did, because then they put the moratorium in and they,
Yep.
stopped it at a certain amount. I think it was like 500. So he got it, but he was still going to do remodel stuff. They can come back and do the inspection. Just make sure you get that done so they don't say, whoops, well, you're out of luck because you waited
Yeah.
till after the remodel.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely the Wild West right now. It totally is. Every municipality, every market, every county, every state is looking at it to see how can I get revenue from this? Boom, or how can we, make sure that it's restricted to a point where it's healthy for that market. So,
Hmm.
100%, I agree that that's your biggest risk. And so if you have predictability, go for it and go get that permit. Make sure that you're lawful, that you're doing it the right way from the start.
Yeah,
Because if you don't, things will come back around and you'll get that permit taken away, or yeah, you'll just lose out on that investment. So 100%, I'm an advocate for that too.
for sure. Um, Well, so I got a couple last questions before we get you out of here,
Sure.
Matt. But one is, what is one online resource or app that you guys are using that you're making, making your business more efficient and effective?
The main one that we use is Guesty. It's a property management software. It connects Airbnb and VRBO into one and any other booking platform as well, and it allows us to manage the calendar. It allows us to automatically set the pricing. It's just our central hub to run the business, right? That's really our ERP. Our operating system is run through there, but that's because we're at scale. Another one I think is really valuable for anybody at any stage is a pricing software. Like I mentioned, pricing is a huge aspect of your business, and there's companies like Price Labs and Wheelhouse. I like Price Labs. It's very simple to get up and running. It will show you it'll show you the demand in your market. It'll tell you, hey, these dates are in high demand. We're going to automatically raise the prices for you because we see that there's low occupancy in the city. That one can be effective day one for anybody who's not doing that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, cool. Yeah, I've heard of Guesty. I think you throwing out some suggestions here on this pod was really good, especially with people that are potentially looking at something, or looking at management and stuff like that, to kind of tip their hat towards what they're going to do. Another one is, what type of book, or what book have you read in the past couple of years that's really helped you with your business grow it?
So I'm actually in the middle of Traction right now. It's the first time
Okay.
I'm reading it, and you hear about EOS so much. I keep hearing it, and over time you hear certain things enough that you say, okay, I need to go figure out what that is. We're at a scale now, and we're at a point where we're going to be growing quickly. That I need to put an operating system in place for the business. How do we handle conflict? How do we manage what our priorities are as we continue to grow? So for us at this stage, Traction is a fantastic book, and I would say even 6 months ago or a year ago, it wouldn't have been nearly as relevant.
Hmm.
Another one so a lot of the books I'm reading right now are related to business structure, how to make sure the business is running effectively and ready to scale. But another book that I read more personally was Atomic Habits. Great
Yeah, that
book,
was really good.
great book, and it just really teaches you the underlying benefits of having good habits and how it can lead to everything else in life. So I use a habit tracker now. It's just on my phone, and it has some things that I'm not 100%. I'm not perfect at it, but I am doing habits that I've wanted to do for a while and actually holding myself accountable to them, and it feels great.
Yeah. Good, man. Yeah, really good book. So last question, where can people find, I know you mentioned Stay Classy. Where can people
Mhm.
find out about you and then also your company?
Yeah, so stayclassyhomes.com is our website. You can also email us at partner@stayclassyhomes. We keep track of that email, so we'll definitely be there. And pretty soon here, you'll be able to find us on Instagram and Facebook as well. We're working on that.
Nice, man. Nice. Well, Matt, I appreciate your time today, dude, jumping into your business and also your background on, how you got the business off the ground, and also successfully left your W-2. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me out, Peter. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Have a good day.
You too.